Assalamu alaikum wa marhaban. I want to welcome you all to Grammica Institute's webinar on how to read classical Arabic texts. My name is Naseem, and I am part of the student and business support team here at Grammica Institute. Before I pass over the mic to Ustad Yusuf, I just want to give a quick introduction. So Ustad Yusuf brings over 10,000 hours of Arabic instructional experience from having taught over 700 students from around the world. He combines this wealth of practical expertise with fluency in English and a deep understanding of the modern student's need for fast, actionable results. Having taught at Qasid Institute in Amman, Jordan since 2009, he has opened up the world of classical Arabic text to complete newcomers. Ustad Yusuf has literally walked hundreds of students through reading classical Arabic texts. In this webinar, you will learn principles to guide you in your reading and how to avoid the most common mistakes. Ustad Yusuf will also walk you through a couple of texts, applying these principles. Our courses begin next month, and we will be talking about these at the end of the webinar. Ustad Yusuf?
Okay, thank you, Naseem. Okay, Bismillah. So, how to read classical text. So, reading classical Arabic text is a skill that one develops over time. While one may know the individual words and grammar of the sentence, putting together everything in English does take some practice, some learning, and of course, time. So let's look at some principles. First thing, realistic expectations. So when we talk about beginning with realistic expectations, we mean a few different things. Laying out the groundwork. What is the groundwork? First, reading at level. So not reading something that is overly difficult, okay? And of course, having studied the requisite nahu and sarf, the grammar and morphology, right? We're reading for comprehension, not just the main idea. And so we have to have our sciences down. So for example, you want to read a commentary on Ihya Ulumuddin, Ghazali's Ihya Ulumuddin. You're not going to be able to read something like this if you have not done and practiced on other unvocalized text, right? This is Zabidi's commentary on the Ihya. And in the older prints, they didn't have any kind of punctuation or voweling. As you can see, only parentheses that indicated the text of the author, and then the rest is the commentary. And so reading at level means reading, of course, not only things that are at your level, but that you have taken the grammar and sarf for. So what does it mean to lay the groundwork? It means to have studied the appropriate grammar, because all of commentary literature, tafsir, requires you to have some grammar and morphology down. Okay, so for example, for the essentials level, that would be something like the Matan al-Ajrumiyya, and learning most of what grammar you need to be able to engage with the text. At the intermediate level, you have to learn irregular morphology. So maybe verbs which have a double root letter or have a weak letter. These are plenteous in the Quran. And at the advanced level, reading unvocalized text and guided reading. So this is something that there's no way you can escape it. You can't jump into guided reading without having taken some instructions on, for example, the types of sentences, right? Which kind of guide our translation. Okay, so first thing, study the required nahu and sarf. Reading in layers. So when you've got a text in front of you, you want to read in layers. What does that mean? So the first, to get a general feeling of what is being said, right? Of course, you have to have a context of what you're reading, and so often you would read quickly at first and then slow down when analyzing. All right, when you're slowing down, you're identifying patterns and meanings of words. So is this a ism? Is this a fi'l? Okay, which form is it? Is it a form 4 or 2 or 1? They look the same in the mudari', in the present tense, right? Is this a sifa mushabbaha or is it a sigha mubalagha, right? Is it a form 4 past tense or is it a ism tafdeel? They look very similar. So there are things that you want to get an overall, where the structures, the common idafa structure, mudaf, mudaf ilayh, or the mawsuf sifa structure, you want to kind of peg these down. The mubtada and the khabar. The mubtada and the khabar, and these are like the parts of the jumla ismiya. The fi'l with the fa'il, the parts of the jumla fi'liya. Conditionals. This is very important, the conditionals. So if you see a conditional particle or noun, you have to know where the clause, conditional clause is and the conditional response, right? And finally, vocalizing internally and externally. That means the internal vowels. So this often means having the correct vowelling for form 1 bab or the masdar pattern, right? Whether it's a fatha, dhamma, kasra. And external. External means the i'rab, the grammar of the word, right? The endings of the words. And so you read in layers, meaning you're reading it multiple times. The D word, number 3, la bud. There's no escape from dictionary work. We weren't born knowing all the words in English, of course. We looked them up, and so even more so for Arabic, which is a very rich language, has many, many words. So we have to look up words in the dictionary, and we have to resist the temptation. We have to resist the temptation to look up words in Google Translate, because it doesn't really help in classical Arabic, right? Especially with internal vowels. And so the Hansberry Dictionary is a very popular dictionary, and it'll serve you well throughout classical Arabic texts, even like things like old things like the Sirah of Ibn Hisham and the Ihya Ulumuddin by Ghazali. Probably 80% of the time, 90% of the time, you'll find what you're looking for, right? It's good. The Hansberry is great for finding out the bab of a verb, the variable in the Madi and Mudari', and the whether the verb is transitive, taking a maf'ul bihi, or intransitive, not taking a maf'ul bihi, higher forms of the verb, right? So this is indispensable. So as you read classical text, we're talking about unvocalized text, you're going to come across words that are not in Hansberry, right? And that's when you would go to an Arabic to Arabic dictionary. That being things like Al-Mu'jam al-Wasit or Al-Misbah al-Munir, which we would study at the advanced levels, which is a still classical Arabic dictionary, about 650 years old, but even more sometimes effective than Hansberry in giving you the context of a word. But the more you look up words at the beginning of your Arabic journey, the less you will have to look up later on. Number 4, translation. So writing it down. So when we're translating, we want to translate according to the grammar of the sentence, a grammatical translation. We don't want I get the main idea, right? You should represent when a maf'ul bihi is brought forward or a jar majrur is brought forward, because this adds to the balagha, the rhetorical eloquence of the Arabic language, right? And our courses are not translation courses, but if you do want to get good at translation, you should mimic good translators. And for Quranic translations, I can certainly recommend the Quran Be Held by Nuh Hamim Keller. The translation reflects the balagha, the rhetorical eloquence that's explained by the mufassirin. And he translates, for example, things that are indefinite, nakira. There are different reasons why something is indefinite in the Quran, or there's reasons why a masculine verb is used with a feminine doer, and vice versa. This is expressed in that translation. And lastly, a note about literary English. So the Quran is the peak of Arabic. And the Prophet ﷺ was the most eloquent of those who spoke Arabic. And so when we translate his words, they should be at an equal register in English. We don't want to translate into street English, okay? We're talking about written translations here. Spoken, of course, there's some leniency in, but in terms of literary English, we should try to make it as best as we can. Okay, this last one is probably the most important principle, and this is, of course, after number one, which is study the Nahu and Sarf, is read aloud. This is the real test of whether you've done your work or what needs work. Reading aloud improves your reading fluency. It's you get an idea of whether you know the endings or not. You know the grammar. You know the sarf. We want to consume as much eloquent Arabic as we can. We want to stuff as much good Arabic in our minds. Good Arabic like writers like Ghazali's Ihya Ulumuddin, and these grammarians. So when we read Arabic, we can recognize eloquence. And so reading aloud is very important. And reading when do you read aloud? You read aloud when you've done your work, but especially after your lesson, when the instructor has corrected the work, that's when you read it 3, 4, 5 times. So these are the main principles, with the first and the fifth being probably the most important. Let's look at some common mistakes that students make. And these are in no specific order, but reading the incorrect bab. So not knowing the internal vowel of a verb in the base verb. For example, reading ghadaba, to be angry, as opposed to the correct version, which is ghadiba. Okay, or reading faraha instead of the correct version, which is fariha. Assuming a fi'l lazim, a verb that doesn't take a direct object, to be a fi'l muta'addin, a verb that does take a direct object. Okay, why is this important? Because if this is a fi'l lazim, then the word after it, if it's mansub, will not be a maf'ul bihi. Rather, it will be some other mansub now. And if it's a fi'l muta'addin, you can guess that the word after it will be a maf'ul bihi. It may be implied, but usually it will be there. Sometimes you have verbs that take 2 maf'ul bihis. You have to know that it's muta'addin li maf'ulain. It's doubly transitive. And the next one is also in line with it, making lazim verbs passive. Okay, lazim verbs don't become passive unless they've got like a jar or majroor. We learned that in our intermediate class. But the lazim verbs don't, so you cannot say ghudiba. He was made angry. Why? Because ghadiba means to be angry. Ghadiba alayhi means to be angry at someone. And only transitive verbs are made passive. And another example of something that students do is say hulika. Okay, they know halak means destruction, and so hulika just means to be destroyed. No, that's halaka means to perish, to be destroyed. So something that is intransitive verbs like to be destroyed or perish, halaka, you cannot make it hulika. You can make a form 4, ahlaka, passive, which means to destroy something else. Uhlika, that's possible. Ghayr munsarif words when mudaf and with alif lam. Okay, so you recognize a word is ghayr munsarif, like ahsan or madaris. And you know that in jar, it takes a fatha, not a kasra. But you forget when it's mudaf, it can take a kasra. And when it's got alif lam, it can take a kasra. So for example from the Quran would be fi ahsani taqweem. Ahsani at-taqweem. Why is it ahsani even though it's a ism tafdeel? Ahsan is ism tafdeel, it should take a fatha, fi ahsana. But because it's mudaf to at-taqweem, it takes a kasra, fi ahsani at-taqweem. This is a common mistake. And lastly, omitting tanween. So the basis of nouns is that it should take tanween, unless you give them a reason not to. Those are three main reasons. They are, if the word is mudaf, if the word has alif lam, and if the word is غير منصرف. In those three cases, you don't give it tanween. If it's mudaf, has alif lam, or is غير منصرف. Otherwise, give it a tanween. This often happens at the end of sentences. So let's look at some of the principles, not all of them, but in different difficulty levels. So this is Stories of the Prophets, Qasas al-Nabiyyin by Abul Hasan al-Nadwi. And he wrote this for beginning students. This is something that you can read probably after you do the Essentials course. So we're going to take the heading really. So we have this heading, Ba'i' al-Asnam. So you may or may not know what Ba'i' means. Ba'i' means seller. Okay, this is an irregular root. Baya'a becomes Ba'i'. It's a ismul fa'il for ba'a yabi'u. Al-Asnam. Let's say you've never seen that word al-Asnam. Well, let's look up the root. Right? The root would be Sad, Noon, Mim. Sanam. And Sanam, as we see below, this is a entry from the Hans Ver. Sanam, plural, Asnam means idol or images, right? The seller of idols. And so this is a chapter heading, the seller of idols. This beginning of Qasas al-Nabiyin. قبل أيام كثيرة كثيرة جدا. Before many days, very many. كان في قرية رجل مشهور جدا. There was in a town a very famous man. Now, here, when I read kana, I say, okay, kana, I've studied kana, and I know it takes a ism and a khabar. It takes a subject and a predicate. If you see a jar majroor, like fi qaryatin after kana, most likely that's going to be the khabar. And then you see a ism marfu' rajulun, what is that? That's the ism kana, with mashhur being a na'at, a sifa. So rajul is the ism kana. You may think because you didn't see it attached, it's huwa, kana huwa. But then you would have to rethink that once you see an ism marfu' rajulun right after. So it means there was in a town a very famous man. Okay. Whereas the last one, وَكَانَ اسْمُ هَذَا الرَّجُلِ أَزَرْ, the ism of kana is ism, ismu. Why does it not have a tanween? It's mudaf to هذا, right? And هذا is في محل جر مضاف إليه. الرجل is not مضاف إليه, even though it has a kasra, because it's copying هذا. What's the i'rab of rajul? It's a badal. Al-kul min al-kul. We call this a badal. And the predicate of kana, the khabar kana, is always mansoob, and that is the last word, azar. The name of this man was Azar. Okay, let's look at a more difficult text. This is Sirat ibn Hisham. So the prophetic seerah of Ibn Hisham. This is about 250 years after Hijri, so it's quite a while away. This is something that we read, in fact, in the intermediate course. So ghairi, the word ghairi here is in a previous sentence. We're going to ignore that. And I read falamma. Now, when I read falamma, I learned that falamma with the fi'l madi after it is a shart. It's a conditional. Falamma, when, ajma'na. Okay, so then I'm looking, when I see lamma, I'm looking for a conditional response. I have a conditional verb, ajma'na. I'm looking for the jawab al-shart, the conditional response. And that conditional response is going to be usually a fi'l madi. And so I keep reading. I say, falamma ajma'na al-intilaq qultu. Okay, qultu. So qultu, you have to recognize this is a madi. You recognize that by the tu, the first person singular. And so this is the jawab. Now I consider I have pegged my sentence down. So lamma ajma'na al-intilaqa. So ajma'na, you have to recognize is a form 4, right? When we resolved al-intilaqa, this is a form 7 masdar. When we resolve to leave, to take off, it's a maf'ul bihi. قلت, I said, this is a jawab, I said, لصاحبي, jar majroor. I said to my companion. She's actually talking about her husband, and it shows they had a really strong relationship because she's referring to him as her friend. لصاحبي, my friend, i.e. my husband. And this, there's a wow now. Wow, and then wallahi. This is a wow, harf qasam. It's a harf jar. Wallahi, the oath, the wow of taking an oath. By God, wallahi. Inni la akraha. Or is it akrahu? Which one? This lam is the sliding lam. It's lam al-muzahlaqa. Inni, it comes with the second part of inna. Inni la akrahu. Indeed, I dislike. Indeed, I would hate. Akrahu, the ha is not part, it's not a dhamir, it is part of the root. Kariha means to dislike. I would dislike. La akrahu. And this lam is not affecting grammatically the verb akrahu. La akrahu an arji'a. An causes a verb become mansub. Arji'a, to return. Min bayni sawahibi, from amongst my female friends. So arji'a is raja'a yarji'u. If you've been in the Arab world, you'll notice they don't say yarji', they'll say yarja'. So arji'a min bayni sawahibi walam akhudh radi'an, while I have not taken a suckling child, a nursing infant. Radi'an is the maf'ul bihi of lam akhudh. You have to know to spell lam akhudh because this is the present tense verb. Lam lam precedes the present tense verb, that's majzoom. It's from akhada ya'khudhu, ana akhudhu. Lam akhudh. Wallahi la. Now another lam. This lam is, and notice this lam comes with the noon at the end. Dhahaba and then a noon. That noon is the noon at-tawkeed. They call it the energetic mood. لَأَذْهَبَنَّ إِلَى ذَلِكَ الْيَتِيمِ. I will surely go to that orphan. Yatimi here, what's the i'rab of yatimi? It's a badal. It's copying the state of ذَلِكَ. ذَلِكَ الْيَتِيمِ وَلَا آخُذَنَّ. Sorry. فَلَا آخُذَنَّهُ. فَلَا, that lam again, it's coming with a noon at-tawkeed. And this is a fi'l mudari', فَلَا آخُذَنَّهُ, and I will surely take him. So this is an example of the a text that you have to know the irregular sarf. You have to know that the noon at-tawkeed, adhabanna and not adhabunna, akhudhanna and not akhudhunna, and you have to know akhudh, not akhadh. Lastly, Imam Ghazali's Ihya Ulumuddin, we read from this in the advanced level. And here, when I read this, so it's partially, so we get less, so the student gets less homework help in the advanced level because they're expected to look up words in the dictionary themselves. وَمِنْ آثَارِهِ. This is from the Kitab al-Ghadab, the chapter on anger, and it's talking about the effects on anger on one's mind and body and heart and tongue. Here it's talking about the external signs. وَمِنْ آثَارِهِ. When I see a jar majroor, I think in my mind either the mubtada is going to come after, the subject has been delayed, or there's going to be a jumla fi'liya after. So here I see taghayyur. Now this is voweled, but you would often see it unvoweled. So the reason why they vowel this is to show you this is a masr, not a fi'l madi of form 5, taghayyara. It's taghayyur. وَمِنْ آثَارِهِ تَغَيُّرُ اللَّوْنِ. Form 5 means to change, be changed. And from its effects, i.e. effects of anger, are changing of one's color. وَشِدَّةُ الرِّعْدَةِ. And shidda is ma'tuf ala taghayyuru. That's why they both are marfu'. And having intense trembling or shaking. So you may not know this word ri'da. You know, okay, ra'ad, Ra'ad is thunder. Let's look at hands below. You look at the bottom left. There's Ri'da. This is a hands entry. Ra'da, Ri'da. Tremor, shudder, shiver. You could say shaking, trembling, right? Is like the person so angry, he's like shaking. وخروج الأفعال عن الترتيب and والاضطراب and the leaving of actions from order. Now, اضطراب, it says اضطرابي, you could make it ma'tuf on af'al, but I think this is an error. I think it should be اضطرابو, and that's a common thing in Arabic text to have vowelling errors. That's why you should study it always with somebody. And اضطراب الحركة والكلام. Ittirab is being agitated or moving, disorder, right? So having agitated or disorderly movement, harakati, wal kalami, in speech. Person can't get a word in, a sentence, they're so angry. وتحمر الأحداق. وتحمر الأحداق. And reddening of the eyes. Reddening of the eyes. Again, a form for masdar, just like taghayyur, tahammur. Walau. Now I see low. I see, okay, low is a shart. So I am looking for a jawab shart. I know the fi'l shart, the conditional clause, is ra'a. No problem. Where is the jawab? I'm looking for the jawab. So where do you think the jawab is? If you keep reading, you'll notice it's the lasakana. The lam often comes as the response of low, and indicates the jawab al-shart. So now I've pegged those down. Let's look at after low. Low ra'a. Okay, ra'a takes a maf'ul bihi. It's muta'addi, it's transitive. Now as ghadbana, is that the maf'ul bihi? No, ghadbana is the fa'il. So وَلَوْ رَأَى الْغَضْبَانُ قُبْحَ صُورَتِهِ. This is a hypothetical condition, were the angry person to see the ugliness of his form, لَسَكَنَ, he would be still, he would be calm, he would be tranquil. حَيَاءً. Why is حَيَاءً mansoob? Is it a maf'ul bihi of sakana? Sakana is lazim, it doesn't take a maf'ul bihi. Haya'an is a maf'ul li ajlihi or maf'ul lahu. The reason why. Some masdar explains the reason why action is happening. He would be tranquil, still, calm. Why? Out of embarrassment, shame. وَقُبْحُ بَاطِنِهِ أَعْظَمُ. So qubhu, mubtada, where's the khabar? It's the ism tafdeel, the superlative, أَعْظَمُ. And the ugliness of his inside is worse, more terrible, literally more tremendous, meaning in a bad way, more terrible. A'zam is not a form for past tense. That would mean to make something great, and that's transitive. You'd expect a maf'ul bihi there. Plus, that wouldn't make any sense. The ugliness of his inside, it made something great, and it's not mentioned. No, this is ism tafdeel, just like we say Allahu Akbaru. Qubhu batini a'zamu. So this is an example of a advanced text. They're often words that are more difficult and that are coming from all over the place, as opposed to a seerah, which you know the storyline. Okay, so that's the end. Classes start next month. I just want to introduce our two newest courses. We have the intermediate, which we're reading the Matan al-Ajrumiyya in its original Arabic, and concepts that are not included in the Ajrumiyya, grammar concepts, like types of sentences, amalism, ta'alluq, and very importantly, irregular sarf. So sarf of double words and weak words, and we do some guided reading. With our advanced text, this advanced certificate is our latest certificate. This, we are reading the Matn, in the advanced certificate, we are reading Mutammim al-Ajrumiyya in fully vocalized, and we are reading the Ihya Ulumuddin. These certificates are certificates of Ijaza, and they are co-signed by Sheikh Ali Hani, the expert grammarian and tafsir scholar. And you will get these once you pass the exam, and they will adorn your office and your study. I'm done. I'm going to pass the mic over to Naseem. Naseem, tafaddali.
Jazakallah khair, Ustad Yusuf, and thank you again, everyone, for attending Grammica Institute's webinar on how to read classical texts. We will be sending out emails with an exclusive discount for our upcoming courses. And we will see you in class. Assalamu alaikum.